Prizes of or in the World by Charles Pinwell. My kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is not from hence. John, Book 18, Chapter 36. What is the greatest prize which can be had of the world? Might it be fame, money, political power, wealth, or acclaim? These are only incidental consolation prizes, really. The pot of gold at the end of the materialist's rainbow is the control of the human organism. Get ye first the control of the whole human organism, and all else will be added unto you. To those with little money, prestige, or power, or few sanctions, first prize just never comes to mind. Nothing suggests its possibility, and the consideration it receives is likewise between negligible and nothing. Nevertheless, for those with more advantages than most, or maybe all others, it is the obvious glittering prize summoning ambition. Once accepted as their objective, however, they are as men rich in some way or another, certainly in ambition and grandiose aims. Thereafter comes the time of trying to pass through the eye of a needle. Not all that is in the world is of it. Inner peace, generosity, joy, the love of others, contentment with simplicity, and wondrous silences are not worldly, but are undeniably present in some measure. They're more highly prized in attaining personal happiness and harmony than anything offering to worldly ambition, yet neglect of them happens. Obsession with material objectives is unfortunately a recurring phenomenon in society. It often infests large numbers of people, somewhat in the nature of a plague. It is invariably associated with a cause. The Marxist in revolution, the Muslim in jihad, the Nazi in pursuit of hegemony, the Zionist trying for exclusivity, and the Puritan destroying beauty because it detracts from his austere precepts have all succumbed. And where does it end? It proceeds with inexorable logic and an unavoidable progression towards seeing its true object, the control of the human organism. The thinly disguised endeavour to control the human organism has taken a multiplicity of forms through history. In Roman times, the key sanction in ruling the world was the military. If one had the support and affections of the legions, one ruled the world, or at least to many one seemed to, and one thought one did too, and one did in a relative sense. One's power over the economy was primitive, and one's use of propaganda and suggestion barely existent. Half the population were made slaves, and the rule was despotic and cruel, but Rome failed. Why? The conventional opinion is that Rome fell because of corruption and immorality, but Rome actually fell from a lack of established control. It was powerless to control men's dreams. Those who despaired of attaining their dreams degenerated into every excess. Those who held to a dream prevailed. They became Christian and founded, through an ocean of tribulation, the West and a more enlightened future for mankind. The next key sanction to prevail in Europe was the monopoly of land. The commanders of the auxiliary troops scattered across Europe at Rome's fall were titled in Latin as rex. These kings claimed the land for themselves and their entourages of supporters. The feudal system had begun. Indentured serfdom replaced the more formal slavery under Christian influence, which saw all as the children of God. Practically everything that supported a person's life, food, clothing, and shelter, came from within a few miles of one's abode. The owner of this land was indeed a lord. The feudal system fell with the mobility of product. As the seas and rivers were increasingly navigated again, and roadways and communications were re-established, the local monopoly over the means of living was lost to the landed monopolists. The mercantile system had arrived. With the opening, freeing, and dispersal of trade, another key sanction arose in time. This was, as it is now, money. At first it took a multiplicity of forms. Notch sticks, honey, and goldsmiths' receipts for gold were among them. In time, the issue of money became the exclusive preserve of private banking houses. They printed their own banknotes until, in the late 19th century, they cooperated to hand this minor function over to government, and thereafter they acquired this legal tender from government for the cost of printing. Over 90% of money was by now being created by extending a credit into borrowers' bank accounts and accepting it as deposits from those who were paid in this credit. Over 95% of all money is now simply an enumerated abstraction in the form of bank deposits for which there are no notes or coins in existence. Money triumphed as the key sanction in society, and being closely held in its creation by a few, there arose again, albeit in a new form, thoughts of pursuing the ultimate prize, increasing control of the human organism. Curiously, this became possible because society was in the main virtuous and almost invariably profitable. Almost all nations are profitable. This is to be observed in that the collective aggregate personal incomes of all their people is usually about 20% less than the price of the consumer goods offered in the marketplace. It is this that explains the increase in indebtedness, public and private considered together, in every country every year of approximately this amount. When consumer incomes are less than the price of total consumer products, consumer debt must be increased, always supplemented with corporate and government debt, which is then paid to consumers in the form of wages, social security, or in other ways. The world's debt, now approximately $250 trillion, is simply the accumulated profit of the world which could not be bought without creating a debt increase. Because money can buy all things of the world, the pursuit of the ultimate prize is in play again. That which is in but not of the world is the sum of the resources of resistance to control. There is an obvious logicality to the logistics of subduing the human organism. Essentially, it really is obvious. The better, sounder and higher instincts simply must be undone. Please don't think that the perpetrators of this are attempting it maliciously. It is not the product of nastiness. It is wholly due to necessity. The central control of the human organism cannot be attained by any means other than destroying its remnant of resistant virtue. There is no alternative if society is to be done good to by enlightened ones. So what does this currently mean? It's bringing us a multiplicity of assaults with the intent to confuse and confound, bewilder and demoralize, and all this preliminary to a compliant acceptance and submission in individual and communal subservience. To doubt this is to believe that the following manifestations of the ridiculous are the products of the popular will. Like what? Like a deliberate campaign to confuse us about gender, the promotion of the idea that unfortunate and sad sexual disorders are not only okay and normal, but even gay, that assisted suicide is safe, and that aborting the unborn, even up to full term, is liberating. While debt in nature is impossible, one can't take bread with next year's wheat crop, nor can one irrigate it with next year's floodwater. There are also the ideas that debt of $250 trillion to an elite banking system is natural and the only way to organize ourselves, that dumbing down the young by withdrawing workable educational methods and discipline is the modern way, and that a vast military-industrial complex is justifiable on economic grounds alone, and that governments that refuse to do the normal accounting of companies for their nations, such as comprehensive balance sheets and profit and loss accounts, can understand national economies wonderfully well. We can all add to this list. We can destroy all forms of choice if we call it discrimination, perfect everything with increasing regulation, and legislate until everyone is virtuous. Can voting for different politicians who won't dare to be different ever make any difference? The above are just the beginnings. All roads to hell will be paved, and all with and in the name of good intentions. Again, we must not suppose that this is done with ill intent. It is not. The good of the world will always ultimately require no less. The hope of control and the control of hope is a one-way street, and all the same to those who would organize the organism and orchestrate it. All roads lead to oblivion with those who love control rather more than they love. The Ten Commandments would seem to have acquired caveats. The commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," now has the qualification, "unless the baby will not be born until tomorrow." The commandment, "Thou shalt not steal," has a similar caveat. How? The total incomes of all Americans in 2014 were measured at $10.1 trillion. The total consumer production of these people was $12.5 trillion. The profit of output over income was $2.4 trillion. As nobody had the income to buy the $2.4 trillion, indebtedness to the banking system was increased by $2.3 trillion to clear the goods and get the economy by. See www.socialcredit.com.au to evidence this. It's quite possible to consider this $2.4 trillion, which is $7,500 for each American or $30,000 per family of four, as a profit. It's possible to consider Americans as being the owner-shareholders of their own country. It's also possible, instead of having the banks create this money as a debt to themselves, of having the same amount created and paid as a dividend to its people, the owner-shareholders. This is, of course, never considered. The commandment not to steal is aimed only at the petty, incompetent, and pathetically inadequate thieves. The masterful ones, the issuers of credit, who legally created $250 trillion as debt to themselves to allow the people of the world to acquire their own profit, which was in excess of their incomes, are quite above censure. This practice is only sanctioned, exonerated, vindicated, and excused on the basis that it is theft on a breathtakingly large scale. No piddlingly small theft is ever so acquitted. Just sin boldly enough, and the world, or those of it, will look away. There is no first prize but control of the organism, and the theft of society's credit is the work of the devotees of a suborned humanity. And those witnessing this in silence are accomplices. Please stop speaking like this. You'll end up frightening the horses.